morning, good afternoon, good evening, yWhales, wherever in the world you are today. So it is June 8th, 23, and let me tell you, it is a roller coaster out there right now. Gensler is the dude's got like a stack of lawsuits with blank names on them, and he's just sending them out to anyone that he can find. Bitcoin, which was holding relatively stable in the 28 to 30, kind of bouncing back and forth, is now kind of trending down to 26. And I don't even want to talk about any altcoins because they're just getting destroyed. And I think it's really interesting to kind of start off this podcast and talk about that suddenly any altcoin is now just a security to Mr. Gensler here in the United States. And I understand globally that's a very different perspective. But I think that's a really big stone to kind of toss out into the arena, that now everything, regardless of how decentralized, regardless of, I think you can argue either way, but without any arguments, they're just suing the exchanges and saying that these are now securities, without any really providing any guidance on them individually. Binance is under attack, as well as Coinbase. Binance, they're threatening to freeze everything. And I think that this kind of goes around a few different ways. Number one, I think our industry did this to ourselves. I think we use terminology, and I think that we do a number of really kind of questionable actions we're testing technology, but we're using terminology, and we're offering kind of what would be considered mature financial vehicles that are really in experimental phase and without a lot of traditional regulatory guidelines. So I don't think that there's a lot of wrong or a lot of rights going on, but I think there's a lot of wrongs on both camps right here. That being said, we're not here to talk about too much of regulation. We're here with Mert from TransferChain, and I've got my amazing co-host Abe with me. So I'm really excited for this one, but because I think that there's a lot of people that are working very hard on how to manage the next version of Web3. And, the days of, the crap coin ICOs and the NFT PFPs of no actual value that are selling for hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars, while, saying that they're going to offer, potential extra returns, or you're going to do better. We're seeing a lot of that fade into the background. We're seeing real utility and a lot of big industries and asset classes that are super interested in blockchain technology. And I think we have one of the coolest, kind of technologists right here, which is TransferChain. And you guys really have some amazing tech. So that being said, before we dive into what you've built today, Mert, if you want to start with a little bit of your background of kind of where you came from and how you got so into blockchain.
Of course. Well, by the way, thank you for the introduction, Jay. I mean, it was a nice summary of maybe a few past years that we had, a big roller coaster. But coming back to TransferChain and coming back to me, really, I'm actually from Istanbul, but I kind of grew up in the States. So I did my undergrad and my high school studies around Boston, spent around 8 to 10 years. Started off as a computer engineer, then switched to finance, interestingly. But it was back in my high school when I first had my first exit. It was a mobile application, kind of like a live radio for music producers, like DJs. And then I bought my first Bitcoin Antminer S1 back in 2014. That was a thing. And then when I was in the undergrad, I had another startup, kind of like a social networking thing that failed. Obviously, it's not easy to start a new social networking app nowadays. But I was always into the technology when it comes to blockchain. And since 2016 and 17, been really part of the whole crypto sector as well. But after leaving college, I worked at Deloitte, like in the Big Four. I also worked in PwC, both in the audit department, in the M&A department, in the valuation department, really all over the place. But during those times, I literally firsthand, I saw how badly the company precious data was managed. Like there was some big flaws, and that kind of like introduced me into TransferChain, where I met my co-founders, and we've been really working hard to maybe resurrecting one of the most important human rights of the 21st century, which is privacy and basically security. So in the past 4 years, really been tough because we've been building. But nowadays, it's now growing and growing and growing. So I hope that vibe continues. But really, I feel special to be here chatting with you guys. So thank you.
Awesome. I just want to point out, if you had an Antminer in 2014, like you were you were the coolest dude on the block, and you probably contributed more to Bitcoin's success than you realized, because there was, that was still very early of people saying, I'm willing to actually invest hardware, actually buy hardware and mine these things, because they were a couple $100, I think at that point, right around then, they had kind of broken that the 3-digit mark. But a majority of mining was still happening on home computers passively, like, hey, my screensaver's on, you just do that Bitcoin thing.
Yeah. And it was literally the first version of Antminers, like S1. I still have it with me. I don't know, somewhere around here, but now I keep it.
I was at Bitcoin Miami. They had them on display in a museum rack. So hold on to
exactly.
it. It'll continue to be part of history. So that being said, I think it's amazing that you've been around the industry for a long time. You've been very interested in nodes and protocols and how all everything works. Let's talk about TransferChain, because I think you're solving some really complicated problems in a very elegant solution. And I'm going to be frank, I've never used it, but I really want to understand more.
So in the most simple terms, TransferChain makes the cloud private. We make it private and we make it secure for businesses, so they could be using end-to-end encrypted and distributed cloud storage, file transfers, file requests, and even messaging. We built this and we tested this with multiple customers throughout the years. So it wasn't like we closed down and went down to a cave and built it ourselves. We really built it with companies and corporates around us. But our protocol upgrades any application with 100% privacy and security. But to start off, instead of just hitting an SDK and opening like APIs and everything, we wanted to build our own interfaces and our own products. As an end user, you can easily imagine TransferChain as maybe like a Dropbox interface, a WeTransfer interface, or WhatsApp interface when it comes to your mobile. But at the back end, the whole another orchestration is happening. And to our knowledge and to our advisors' knowledge, it's the world's most private and secure cloud protocol out there right now today.
That's amazing. So in a world, and again, I work in the same industry, and you probably face the same problems I do, which is it's information, it's free, it's decentralized, it's anonymize it here and there, but it should never be restricted. And I'm going to say I agree with your thesis. I think that any major corporation, you have to have your rights to privacy. You have to have your rights to say Abe, you can see XYZ, and Mert, you can see ABC, but I may not want those to be like, if I want to actually be in business on chain, I should have a choice of some of these things. Now, I think again, there's a lot of nuances there, but how do you determine kind of your moral and ethical right and wrong on how you're doing this?
Well, to be honest, like, it has to be a choice of that corporate or that human being when it comes to sharing their data. And until now, the whole cloud industry was basically built to monetize the data. Mm-hmm. But we're here to really protect the data for both B2C and B2B. And when it comes to the analogy of like privacy and security, I don't have to drop names here. Anyone can imagine and ask this question to themselves. But if I asked you, do you think your data at X cloud is secure? Most likely you're going to say yes, because like they're the top 5 companies out there. But if I ask you the same question, Jay or Abe, regarding, do you think your data at this X cloud company is private? Most likely the answer is going to say no. Yeah. We believe, and this is not just me, like you can ask our whole team, 25, we have 27 team members, including us. You can ask each one of them and ask, well, can security exist without privacy? No. The answer is no, because they have to be interconnected. Data has to be both secure and private to be really 100% private or secure, because if your data can be accessed by that X company, and if they're using that data or selling it to other companies, or I don't know, sharing it with department or another company when it's needed, that's a red flag. That's no go. And we really built this protocol to prevent that.
So walk me through from kind of start to finish. Let's do kind of two different use cases. There's a personal one of, I'd like to store my kind of photos and videos of things that are personal to me, versus a corporation that has, assets that they want to make sure are never lost, can never be deleted, can never be, these are important, kind of assets to them. Is it the same path, or is it a little bit different for each use case?
The protocol works the same. Of course, there are small nuances that B2B customer can change. For instance, like a residency option, they can choose the United States and their data is automatically migrated and split and distributed in the States or Europe. So there are those kind of small nuances. But when it comes to the core architecture, it's very much similar. So let's just give you an example that if Jay was to upload a file to TransferChain today, before that file leaves your client, it first gets encrypted end-to-end on your client. Before it leaves, and by the way, the end-to-end encryption is getting common nowadays, which is a good thing. We love that. We support that. Please keep it going. But before that data leaves your client, we also split that file into multiple little chunks, Jay. And then these chunks, unlike the traditional methods where everything is stored in a centralized server, we then distribute it among different providers. And here's a small catch. You probably know Filecoin, you probably know SIA. Like there are a lot of companies out there that are doing peer-to-peer structures. But since 2018, 19, when we first sat down, we were really targeting the B2B customers. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to the differentiation of us and to those very good players out there, there's a big gap there. They chose peer-to-peer, which we respect, which we love. But when it comes to the business industry, it might not be the best case scenario, because if I tell UBS and go to Switzerland and tell them, look, I'm going to take your bank data and split it to random people's computers, that's a question mark. So we chose to use the world's safest providers. So each data, when they're encrypted and split, they get distributed to AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, you name it. It's provider agnostic, so we can integrate anything you want. And then all the metadata itself, Jay, goes back into the blockchain, once again, encrypted with your key. So if someone asks me, where's Jay's data? As a co-founder of the company, the only answer that I could give them, who's Jay? Please introduce me to him.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely, kind of the correct answer in my book as well. And for people that don't understand big data and big companies that have protocols and fiduciary responsibilities and SOC compliances, and oh my God, it's never ending. The big companies like a UBS, there's probably a 100-person department that's doing nothing but making sure that they're being compliant. Yeah. And while we can sit here as blockchain nerds and say, oh, it's decentralized, it's secured, the cryptography is sound, all they have to say is, that the checkbox is going to come back, and it may be archaic to some of us. It's going to say, do you know where this data is? And if you say no, then you're out of compliance. And so exactly. It's a little bit of the technology is kind of, we are bleeding edge here. And while we're saying, it's mutable, you can never know it's hashed, you can't get into it. When you're talking about multi-billion-dollar companies that this is not a, generally always a cheaper way to do it.
Yeah.
Like they're going to, that's why people buy IBM. It's not because it's the best. It's just that it's that old saying, no one gets fired for buying IBM. And so I think that what you've done here is really interesting, because you're trying to blend the two. You're trying to say, look, if you don't care, if you're a personal user, it's up there. Nobody cares. You believe in the technology, use it. But hey, if you're corporate and you do have compliance and regulations that you have to follow, then here's an alternative path. And I don't think enough Web3 developers really think through that. And it may just because they don't have that back, that experience in this asset class.
No, exactly. And maybe working Big Four and experiencing like the perspective of the corporates so in depth maybe helped us. But I believe it's one of the key reasons we can enhance and speed up the adoption, like the big adoption when it comes to the blockchain, and kind of finding that sweet spot between today and tomorrow. There has to be transition. It's not like boom, we have to.
Mert, I'm really impressed by the thoughtfulness when you approach to this product, and I know that you have a background in product design as well, and you come from the Big Four, and it sounds like you did really great job doing a product market test cycle, especially with corporations. What was some of the the theory that you're putting together, the idea that you're putting together really makes sense. But when you were doing these interviews and when you were going through a design phase, what were some of the surprising things you learned that was a need, whether realized or unrealized need by some of these corporations? Because it sounds like there's a lot that you learn from there, but that can also be translated to other sub-industries as well, maybe government agencies who are looking to do the same thing with data that's being shared. So could you share some of the things that you've learned that was a surprise during those experiences?
That companies want a lot of control, like not just like outside of the organization, but inside the organization as well.
Wow.
To a level of like, I would be like, guys, like that's kind of like breaching the like privacy within your company. But there probably a lot of bad things happened within those corporations that they're so fragile and they don't want to take any risks. But a lot of companies wanted to like have a lot of control, meaning what data is being shared, like doing inspections within each Word document, each PDF document that's being shared, and trying to find those keywords and flagging them, and whenever it's necessary, like taking precautions and everything like that. And for us, that has been a challenge, especially because for us, the moment that data is leaving your computer, it's already encrypted and split. So on the fly or on the rest, we don't have any clue what that file or what that data is. So there was that interesting nuance when we were in touch with these corporates that some of them, they really want to touch the company data at all given times.
Wow.
Which is understandable, but at the same time, there's a small paradox there. So right now we're finding ways of integrating those as well, like DLPs and everything. But it's interesting, and I think there are a lot of things that are holding back the blockchain industry, and one of them is user experience. And that's why we had to sit down. These were not just like a Zoom call interviews. We literally went and spent days at the corporates, worked with different departments of teams, IT, security, but also marketing and sales, also C-levels, to see what they're used to, what they're using right now, and really took those user interfaces and experiences and spent so many hours on finding the best. And to be honest, like if you were to compare our UIs, UXs with the big players out there today, I'm pretty assured, I'm pretty confident that we can easily battle with them. And I can sometimes say, okay, we're in this spot, we're actually better. But it's been tough. It's been a tough ride.
Yeah, when you think about corporate data, I mean, a lot of people have Dropbox and they play around with Dropbox, and I'm going to assume that's one of your Web2 competitors. But Dropbox has a lot of nuanced controls for a personal account. When you go over to the business account, Abe, as a yWhales team member, you can say it's almost a nightmare sometimes with how granular these controls can get. Who has access, what days do they have access, can they read, can they write? And I will say, as someone who's run large enterprise companies, and in a former life I did a bunch of consulting for multi-billion-dollar companies. Every person, and you need it to be integrated in sometimes with Office 365, Gmail. There's tools that the IT companies like. If you can't integrate with single sign-on, then we're not gonna do this work for you. And so the corporate world is a very hard one to break into. Whereas a lot of like web wallet, the Web3 wallet, it's like binary. It's either you have access or you don't have access. And so like there's no bigger nightmare I can imagine than a enterprise accounting office sharing a seed key to a single wallet that they're theoretically going to be moving money around. We have Fireblocks. Fireblocks is $60,000-$70,000 a year.
Yeah,
it does give those granular controls and does it absolutely perfectly and amazing. It's still 10 times more complicated than using a traditional enterprise bank.
It is. And that's so accurate, Jay, because specifically, yes, single sign-on, Active Directory, all of that, man, like they're asking about it. I respect it. And compared to what we have built, of course, these are a lot more like straightforward, easy peasy additions, and which we are currently doing. And we have our roadmap, public roadmap. So even our customers or our users are dropping in ideas and we're ranking them. And we are very transparent when it comes to our progress. So it's been tough, and now we're working on those straightforward features, as you mentioned. It has to be there if we want to integrate to today's business world.
Why don't you dive a little bit more now that you guys are working with clients? Dive a little bit more into the sub industries that you see are gravitating towards this type of technology. You probably started off with finance. It sounds like that might have been experience or just your network, and so just by default, you probably had a gravitational pull to there. But do you see this shifting into other areas? Both in the traditional sense or the Web3, maybe there's a gaming component that you guys are looking at as far as target market. We'd love to know more about that.
I mean, yeah, FSI is one of the biggest industries when it comes to data breaches and like privacy breaches. So it's clearly a easy target. But I feel like every industry should be taking precautions and start using and changing those traditional methods. There's so much data in the healthcare that's so important and so valuable. At the same time, right now we're like integrating to law firms because at the end of the day, they have a lot of private data that they're constantly transferring. So we are partnering up with law firms, having some additional customers from Europe, from Turkey. At the same time, a lot of interest from insurance space as well, because again, that's a lot of valuable data. And hopefully we'll be doing a few POCs with the biggest giants out there, but I cannot drop names because we haven't signed the contract yet. But they're European-based insurance companies. And every step, because it's interesting, companies are taking these security and privacy advancements, but they have to also reflect that to their customers. Right. There's a small nuance there. It can be a potential huge competitive advantage. Not many companies are still realizing this, but a lot of surveys out there that are going to into consumers and customers, they're very questioning when it comes to data privacy of their own data. And companies can really flip that to their advantage. But that's basically it.
Yeah, you also touched upon an interesting point. You mentioned that you were engaged with the Turkey private sector, but I also know that Turkey, as a government, also has been introducing blockchain technologies. I think with identification and some public services as well. It'd be fun if, given your perspective, if you could elaborate a little bit more about Turkey's government in that direction, and perhaps other countries that might find this of interest as well.
I mean, Turkey's has always been and still is a gray area when it comes to the regulation, when it comes to the blockchain area. They're doing a good job when it comes to privacy. A lot better than the States, to be honest, because there's GDPR in Europe and that we have something similar in Turkey. But when it comes to the blockchain, it's very much gray area. And to be honest, my knowledge is mostly in Swiss, because our company is also HQ in Switzerland. And main reason why we chose that was obviously data privacy regulations, and obviously the blockchain regulations are so advanced in Switzerland. Right. And we just, when it comes to the safety of our customers' data, we want to be in the safest country and safest regulation area as well. And that's why it was a bit costly, but that's fine. It is the right choice to be in Switzerland. And I think every country should be basically looking close to what Switzerland has been accomplishing when it comes to regulation.
Well, I'll be in Zurich in 2-3 weeks because that's where we're.
I'll be there. Yeah, please.
Well, let's meet up. Let's hang out.
Sounds good.
And I think it's really. I think this is one of the saddest things to me. I'm a red, white, and blue American. I have spent decades building companies. Employing people and so much. And I don't know anyone left that is willing to invest capital or energy into the United States, related to this, and from the country that built Web 1, that really launched the internet and put together, ICANN and good regulatory bodies that had common sense. The DMCA isn't perfect. Section 230 isn't perfect, but at least it was like, hey, here, we're going to give you a base framework to work off of, versus what we talked about during the opening, which is like, we're just going to sue you all now. And any of you that survive the lawsuits, maybe we'll let you continue doing business. But what they're missing there is the thousands, tens of thousands of startups are like, I'm going to Switzerland, I'm going to Cyprus, I'm going to Dubai. I mean, they are welcoming us with open arms and saying, what you're already doing today, is regulatory compliance. They may need to add a couple nuances there, and we're perfectly happy to do so. Tell us what you want. You want KYC, AML, OFAC compliance. You got it. You want transparency on, audits and regulatory compliance. Not a problem. But what are those? And so I completely, with a little pain in my heart, I'm thrilled to see that the EU and a variety of other countries around the world are accepting blockchain technology, recognizing that no matter what we think, Swift is dead. It cannot keep up with the rate of innovation. It's like saying, hey, we want to protect the fax machine industry because copper phone lines, they're there, they've already been installed, everyone's got it. You can use a phone, you can use a fax machine. Why do you need anything else? Like, come on, guys. And that's really kind of been the challenge, is that anyone that did reject web 1 thinking, or say I don't want to have email integrated in my company, fell behind very quickly in the early 2000s.
No, it's a fact. And to be honest, like, these recent news was unexpected for me personally. But what I learned from the industry in the past 10 years is basically always expect the unexpected. It's cliche, but it's true. There has been so much investment, so much growth in this United States regarding the blockchain industry as well. We're in a weird state, but we always have been in a weird state when it comes to this industry. So I'm kind of used to it. I'm like, okay, not surprised. I'm curious about what's next, to be honest.
Go for it, Abe.
Speaking about different regions, and I know that you guys have this web of networks and part of the decentralized method here. How do you go about selecting your subregions? I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Filecoin has a significant number of their presence in China-based locations. So that might be off limits to a number of clients out there. But how do you go about selecting your regions and sort of working that out with your clients as far as where their data are dispersed out?
So, Abe, there are two types of data that we have. One of them is the content itself. That's like the corporate's sensitive files, your personal photos, family pictures, everything.
Okay.
That is being encrypted and split and distributed among basically anywhere you would like, anywhere we integrate it. So far, we have multiple locations in Europe. We have a location in Turkey. We have different locations around the world, but most of them are around Europe. And whenever a customer on their sign-up process chooses a residency location,
Great.
Their whole company data is automatically migrated in Switzerland, for instance, or in Frankfurt. But when it comes to the nodes, when it comes to the blockchain nodes, there's also an interesting nuance there, because we started utilizing our customers, literally our B2B big clients, to run those nodes. And interestingly, once again, instead of giving them like token rewards or like other stuff when it comes to the incentivization when it comes to running those nodes, we didn't want that path as well. We actually went to an incentivization of discounts. So, for instance, UBS could be using TransferChain in the future. They have 5,000 employees, and maybe their monthly cost is $200K. Okay, if they were to be running a node, they automatically get a 50% discount. And how much do they have to pay to run that node? Not much, than a few $100s per month. So then you take a step back and look at TransferChain's nodes, and you'll be seeing the biggest corporates around the world. So kind of like biggest companies that you can trust, biggest places that you can trust are running these nodes. We also believe that's going to bring a huge advantage in the later game, in the future, in upcoming years, kind of like showcasing how these two industries can correlate and work together. At the same time, how these big corporates are helping decentralize this system and its core with their own hands.
It's very sticky.
Yeah, I think one of the coolest things is that you are recognizing, data laws, and it's very easy to say, it's decentralized as hash. I keep referring back to this because that's the way most of Web3 just is. We don't need to apply this regulation to our technology because our technology is different. No, it's not. And there's we've seen a few other people attack similar problems like this in like the healthcare industry, and in healthcare you have to abide if you even want to think that you're going to do any amount of business in there. and so I love the thoughts of like there's options, like you're you're localizing the data in certain sense, you're decentralizing it as much as possible. If somebody doesn't care or it's personal, like, hey, we'll do the traditional Web3 thing. But I also love the idea of incentivizing large businesses that generally have amazing data centers and tons of server space, to say, hey, participate in this network in a meaningful way. And just that participation is going to lower your costs overall. It's probably a little hard for the billing department and the IT department to collaborate on how that's going to exist.
They'll get used to it.
The
They'll
fact
get
it's
used to
there.
it. Yeah, it is. No, I think it's a cool idea, and I think more and more Web3 companies will be implementing this idea as well. I haven't seen another Web3 company yet. That's probably my bad doing this, but probably there are companies out there utilizing this model and this case scenario as well.
You actually have like a UI UX. Like it is there, and it seems like overall, that's why I've been looking down at my computer. I'm playing with it. Web3 is kind of in the background. Like it's there. You're being very clear that it exists, but there's no MetaMask login. There's no nothing. Like this is a true, Web 2 experience with a Web3 backend. How did you actually bridge that gap? Because I know so many people and so many protocols and projects that they say that that's what they're going to do, but at the end of the day, it's the Web3 just appears and drives you crazy.
I mean, maybe since day one, Jay, like it has been one of my favorite. Like the first MVP we had, I designed it myself, like the whole UI UX. It was shit. Like it was really bad, but it still made sense. It was simple to use. And when we were building and expanding the team, we have a great team when it comes to tech, when it comes to like business, marketing, and everything, but also the UI UX team. Everything is in-house. We did not outsource the UI UX. Every single period, every single pixel is designed by the whole team. And when it comes to expanding and showcasing these to our users, the end user can only trust something that they know how it works or how it looks or how it feels. When you bring a MetaMask, when you bring those Web3 tools and everything, they start to like question it and they start to get afraid. We're not ready. Maybe we need a few more years when it comes to bridging that. Obviously, if you're doing a crypto wallet, you have to have those. But as a cloud company, I don't really have to have a MetaMask. And as an end user experience, literally look at Dropbox, look at WeTransfer, look at WhatsApp. They're great companies and they really aced that user experience. And we did not go to the United States, find the continent once again. Like we basically sat down and looked at these guys and improved from them and followed the new trends. And I'm pretty strong when it comes to our UI UX. Everything is so simple, so nice to use. And I think that's going to be very helpful as we continue to scale and as the word of mouth continues to get around for TransferChain in the future.
How are you like, so speed is still, kind of, I think probably the biggest, difference between a Web 2 and Web 3. So we've got more security, there's always that trade-off. You got three different things, you get to pick two. You get speed, you get security, and you get reliability. And most likely you've got the reliability and the security. How do you get the speed to be, excessive of these major data centers that have the CDNs? And I mean, like Azure, nobody cares if you're on Azure or S3. They just know it works and it works fast, and you're moving things. How can you get that speed to be on parity?
That's a very good question, and I think now you were talking about it, that classic triangle came into my mind as well. To be honest, we're pretty fast. Not as fast as like I don't know, these big players out there, like Web2 companies out there. But as an end user, you don't feel the difference. You literally have to time it to see there's a difference. Obviously there is, because we do end-to-end encryption, like client-side encryption is going on, file splitting is going on, file distribution is going on. But when it comes to the speed, the big companies out there in our sector, in the blockchain sector, like, again, I don't have to drop names, but like those decentralization storage companies, they're fast later on, but at the beginning, when you first initiate that download, or file transferring, they're pretty slow. Their file access latency is pretty high. That's basically the reasoning when I don't know, maybe it's not the best way to say it, but we had torrents. We used to use, I don't know who used it, but people used to use torrents. And as if you were to start, okay, I don't wanna, that's your choice of bringing it out.
Who didn't have a little fun with Pirate Bay back then?
Yeah.
Okay.
But you'll recall when you first initiate that download, as you get more and more peers, your download speed is pretty slow. But when you have 50 peers, it's pretty fast. Right. That goes to the same problem with these players out there. So when we chose those biggest companies out there like Google Cloud, Azure, AWS as our storage nodes, we had a chance to reduce the number of splitting. So instead of 200 pieces, instead of 100 pieces and distributing among these personal computers where they have a lot of variables regarding their internet speed, is their computer turned on or turned off, how is their latency, a lot of variables out there. But when we use these big giants, it's scalable and it's fast. And we don't have to split it 200 pieces anymore because the storage place is already safe. So we reduce the number of pieces that we have, which helps the file access latency, which helps the speed and performance as well. So as an end user, not much difference.
Let me give, for those people that are listening to this that have no idea what we're talking about, a quick overview, and please correct me, Mert, because I'm going to be wrong on this. No. So in the days of Napster and LimeWire, when you kind of were going to other people's peer-to-peer, meaning that you were going to go to, I'm going to go to Mert, I'm going to go to Abe, and I'm going to ask for certain portions of his files. That if, let's just say the file is broken up into 100 different pieces, and each piece is, I say 10 megabytes now, and we laugh, but that was a lot, back in the late 90s and early 2000s. And so you could technically have, 100 different peers that you were trying to attach, trying to link to, and they were all kind of, their upload speed was generally less than your download speed. And you could literally go up and down the list and say, I'm going to kill node, 25 because it's going so slow. And node 80 is just burning through these things left and right. And so you literally had a manual thing you had to look at and figure out. So that was back in the old days of connecting to a bunch of dial-up modems, to get a single file. What Mert's saying now is that he's going, hey, we're splitting this up. Azure has pieces of it. S3 has pieces of it. There's a little bit in a couple other protocols. And so the limits are technically really just your download speed because you are maxing out small chunks of it across multiple different content distributions networks. So theoretically, once it gets going, it should accelerate past a single source like Dropbox or somebody else. So that's very cool.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
I did that good?
No, pretty good. And
pretty good.
I mean, we also, again, I think we found as a company, as a team, that small gap, that sweet spot there when it comes to, again, our comparison with the other blockchain guys out there, which again, full respect, but we're following another unique path.
Yeah, that's wonderful. What comes to mind is, for anyone who's really new to this, it almost sounds like you're taking a big puzzle, you're turning it over, and you're just breaking up into multiple pieces. It's a 200-piece puzzle piece. And what might have happened in the past is you're giving out all the 200 pieces to various different computers and nodes. Essentially what you're doing now is you're taking that same puzzle piece and you're breaking it up into just 4 big chunks, and you're handing it off to more powerful data centers who can then put the puzzle pieces together, still turn it over, because nobody really knows what the picture is actually like, except the person who's requesting that puzzle piece. Is that fair to say?
Exactly. Yeah. If you open an S3 bucket on AWS, there will be thousands, hundreds of millions of little pieces, encrypted pieces, and by themselves, they're just corrupted files. You can have no clue what that file is, where it belongs to. You can only understand that through blockchain, where you have to go to your block, to your transaction, decrypt it with your key. You will have the whole metadata and find all of the slot information, get the pieces together, decrypt it once again, boom, you have your file, and it's instant. I swear to God. Please go ahead, try it.
Believe me. And don't, let's ask this question. What's the largest file? Can we move a couple terabytes up there?
Now, that's a good question as well. So since we're doing end-to-end encryption and since it's happening on a client, obviously we have limitations. When it comes to our desktop apps or mobile apps, there's not much limit. We personally limited ourselves to 20 gigabytes for now, because 99% of our customers and consumers, that's good enough. But when it comes to the browsers, that's an interesting place, because the operating softwares are not giving the whole CPU, the whole memory power to browsers right away, because at the end of the day, you're just opening a website, and if they require and if they're allowed to get all of the CPU, they can basically crash your browser and computer. So there's a limitation between the operating software and the browser itself. So for now, our limitation on the browsers is 1 gigabyte only, but we have already solved this problem, and we'll be launching our plugins very soon. And when you download a plugin to your browser, Jay, that plugin can then get full access to the whole CPU or the memory within your computer, which then allows us to, again, open up the upload to 20 to 50 to 100 gigabytes without any problems. But it was interesting for us to face that as well, because our browser compatibility is the most recent thing that we launched. We thought we couldn't be able to do it 2 or 3 years back, but we have, again, put a lot of R&D down to really accomplish this as well.
Mert, thanks for sharing so much of your information here. Your expertise in this industry is really profound, and I think you're doing really high quality work here for not only just individuals who are trying to keep their data safe as we start to gravitate in that direction, but also for companies and corporations too. With TransferChain being around for a couple of years now, why don't you walk through some of the products that you have so that some of the people listening to our show can really understand what your value propositions are and some of the products that they can sort of explore with you?
Of course. So at its very core, it's the most common feature out there. We provide cloud storage. So just as if you're using your iCloud, your Dropbox, and Google Drive, we have your storage, but now it's a lot more safer, 100% private, 100% secure. But we also have file transfers, because obviously if you have your data somewhere, you want to transfer it to somewhere. But if we were to let you go and use another service, again, you're breaching your own security. So we also have a transfer feature directly within to another TransferChain user, or at the same time, the recipient doesn't have to have an account. They can still access and download the data from the web, from their mobile, same thing. But then we also introduced file requests. So we saw a lot of insurance companies. That was a big use case there when we were doing POCs with them, that they were grabbing a lot of data from their consumers, their customers, but they did not have a safe way. They were still using emails to get that personal data. Wow. So we also introduced file requests where we're kind of replacing FTPs as FTPs, where the user or the company can create a link, boom, like instantly, and share that with the recipient, and then they can upload their penetration test reports. They can upload, for instance, our Big Four. We had all these reports, such confidential data that was just being moved around emails. They can just receive these Big Four reports from these companies with this one simple link. We also have messaging built in, but that's not available on the browsers yet, only on our mobile phones. And interestingly, we brought all these features together in a single app. So you don't have to go change different apps, different products. They're all built into a single interface. So you can easily move around and use it as if
you've already beat Google.
Yeah, seriously.
The amount of time I have to spend logging in and logging out of all their various products. So that's awesome.
Yeah. And it sounds cost effective too, right? Especially at least for individuals.
That's true, because I mean, some companies are using transfer products, and then another one for storage, another one or still there are ITs that are manually opening up FTPs to handling these kind of data interactions. Now it's just in a single app. And when it comes to the prices, by the way, for us, if you go to any Web 2 traditional method out there, we're almost the same price, sometimes 10-15% cheaper, sometimes 10-15% more expensive, but we're in that range, which is also very surprising for these companies out there.
So you bring up an interesting point here, and data breaches are just continuously just getting worse. Doesn't matter what industry, what space, forward, backward, old school, new school. Why do you think it's still increasing? Is it a lot of just user mistakes? Is it a lot more hacks? I mean, you're the perfect person to ask this question. So I'd love to get your thoughts as far as, why we still see this continuous the trend going going hockey stick up.
I mean, definitely one of the big reasons is a lot of companies are moving to cloud. A lot of data is now being generated. There's a lot more data out there than before.
Right.
But at the same time, the methods that these companies or all of us are using today hasn't changed that much for like a decade. We're still using very similar products. And when it comes to these attacks, they just keep rising as well. And
Right.
these attacks, cyber attacks, are just becoming more and more autonomous. And
Right.
there are a lot of interesting facts when it comes to our industries. It's interesting to note that each company today, in a global average, are spending 3 times of what they spend on that cloud storage to protect that cloud itself. That's very inefficient. Inevitably, the annual damages that has happened because of these data breaches has reached $6 trillion annual. So our unique value proposal is here also. You don't have to spend that much on cloud security. We are bringing that security, we are bringing that privacy within built into the product. So when it comes to us, we're also showcasing some cost effectiveness, cost efficiency. So that's also an interesting nuance. But we don't always say that out loud because I think data security and privacy itself is already a huge, big subject that has to be taken care of. But companies just have to stop maybe using old school traditional methods because they're just vulnerable and they have to upgrade themselves as if it's a manufacturing business, they're upgrading their manufacturing systems, their factory. They have to do the same thing when it comes to their IT and really take care of your key. It's your key, it's your data. If you just randomly use these cloud providers or like even on-prem, there are a lot of risks that companies are still not really cared about, but we care for you. We care for that company. It's really our core mission. Like the day I'm going to be the happiest probably will be like, okay, like these big corporations, like the cloud providers out there are switching and changing their systems when it comes to distributing the data, encrypting the data, and really leaving no data on the cloud without encryption or without this file splitting going on. I think that day I'm gonna be like, okay, like I'm check mark. I can now hang out with Jay. Like we can chill in Zurich, expand the blockchain space with Abe. I'll come down, and then we're gonna be hopefully having some good times in the future. But yes.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a few minutes before we kind of get there because there's a lot of education we're gonna need to do.
Yeah, that's true.
For the CIOs and the CTOs that still don't understand the difference between blockchain technology and cryptocurrencies.
That's true.
I know.
It's a constant battle that I have of and there's a lot of people that really do understand this. I've spoken to people that are running multi-billion-dollar hedge funds that will not even think about touching cryptocurrencies. No interest in it. Not even there's no theses, even Bitcoin that they would touch. But blockchain technology is very interesting to them because it can manage regulated financial products. It does have encryption levels that go well above and beyond, the security of traditional, content distribution networks, such as Azure and everything else, because it is encrypted. Dropbox says that my data is encrypted. But
it is encrypted, but for Dropbox specifically, which is public, by the way, server-side encryption. It's only server-side, so they have the keys.
Yeah.
So just like any other traditional player out there, meaning they can do a lot of things, but there has to be an end-to-end client-side encryption.
And a backdoor is a backdoor, and while you say the good guys have that backdoor key and they're watching it, we've seen what happens when suddenly you don't. And when we're talking about data like this, pictures, videos. I mean, think of just losing when people get their phones hacked and they get their personal pictures. Corporations do have IP. They do have. It's not about are they doing anything illegal, but they have IP. They have regulatory compliance that they can't disclose people's information. So that's extremely important. So I love that thought. So Mert, as we kind of bring this guy to a close here, you've been doing this for a long time. You understand blockchain technology and the overall asset class, and I love what you guys are doing with TransferChain and the suite of products. Where do you see kind of this industry going? Do you see us really continuing to all the hype and energy going into meme coins and monkeys, JPEG monkeys, or can we start to see some of the real products and projects start to get the attention and true, like I said, novel integration into the Web 2 world, like what you guys are doing? Are we going to start seeing that kind of attention, and how?
I think that's a good question because there has been a lot of, again, roller coaster vibes that we had in the past 10 years, and this specifically in this industry as well. But just like the web itself, how it started back in early 2000s or like late 90s, there has to be that climax and everything falling down and then rebuilding. And whoever's left to rebuild to that trust, whoever's left to really take that one step further, are really the ones that are keen to making big differences in the world and not just there for the hype. I think especially in the 2018 and maybe just 2 years ago, there was still a big hype, and not just in the blockchain industry. 2 years ago, we also had a lot of startups out there, a lot of high valuations, insane amount of investments that are kind of like too much aggressive maybe. Now all of that came down. Is today a healthy moment? Probably not. Maybe something in the middle is the most healthy spot, I think. And in the upcoming 2 or 3 years, I think whoever is left or whoever is just starting now to this, like when you look at it out from outside, you don't see the hype of 2021 or 2018 anymore. So you have to really want to be in the sector to be coming in as a new player today. So those players out there, and also the ones that are like us that has been riding this roller coaster for a while now and just got used to it and are still keen to continue building, I think will be the ones that are really shaping the future when it comes to Web3. I'm pretty excited, to be honest. Like there's so much potential still, this like insane amount of potential. And I'm just welcoming all the other founders in the Web3 space, doesn't matter, Web2 space, continue building and like changing things in the world. It's just a nice feeling. It's something else. You cannot explain that. You've faced that multiple times, Jay. Hopefully, myself and my team will be sharing that experience as well. But I'm here to really have my whole hair go white and continue building. And when I have things change around the world when it comes to privacy and security, I can take a quick break and then probably in a few days roll back in.
That's amazing. Fabulous answer, by the way. So with bringing this to a close, Mert, how can people learn more if they want to reach out to you and kind of want to interact with you? What's the best way to find TransferChain and everything you guys are working on?
We're out there in every single social media platform, Twitter, LinkedIn, even Instagram. We're running this special data security content. It's very unique. I like it on Instagram as well. But even please reach out to me if you want to reach out to me personally, LinkedIn, Twitter. We will probably have these social links within the description of this video. And within 24 hours, you'll be getting a response from me no matter what, because I'm literally on the computer or on my phone all the time. More than excited to really welcome the yWhales community as well, and also Riverside as well. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Fabulous, man. Really appreciate it. Bringing this to close, Abe, thank you so much for the time today. Great co-host as always. Mert, I appreciate you coming by and really love the education. I'm going to go ahead and see what I can break, uploading and downloading, and I'll time it compared to this because I've got some really nice 10 gig fiber here in the building. So
okay, sounds good.
We'll run a node for you as well. Why not?
Sounds good.
But yWhales, this is Mert with TransferChain, and we'll see you guys next time.